Trump wants to buy Greenland. Not rent it, not build a hotel there. Buy it. The whole island. From Denmark. He's been saying it for years. He sent his son there. He threatened tariffs. He said the US would get it, one way or the other. The world looked up from whatever it was doing and went, "Wait, what?" But here's the question nobody really asked. If Trump wants a giant frozen island, why Greenland? Antarctica is 5 times bigger. It has 0 civilian population. No government to negotiate with. No prime minister to call. No one to say no. So why isn't anyone trying to buy Antarctica? That question sounds dumb. Until you actually answer it. And then it explains basically everything about how geopolitics works, in one weird frozen example. Okay? Greenland first. Greenland is the world's largest island. 4 times the size of Spain. About 80% of it is under a permanent ice sheet. And the total population is around 57,000 people. That is smaller than a lot of suburban towns. It's technically part of the Kingdom of Denmark. But Greenland has its own elected government, runs its own affairs, and has been pushing for more independence for years. Denmark handles defense and foreign policy. Greenland handles the rest. So you look at this place, mostly ice, tiny population, remote, cold, and you think, why does anyone powerful care about this? Then you look at the map, and the map explains everything. Greenland sits at the intersection of North America, Europe, and the Arctic Ocean. It's the northwestern anchor of the North Atlantic. And that position is the entire point. There's a stretch of ocean between Greenland, Iceland, and the United Kingdom called the GIU Gap. GIUK. Those are the first letters of the 3 landmasses. Not a catchy name. But what it represents is genuinely important. This corridor connects the Arctic Ocean to the Atlantic Ocean, and Russia's Northern Fleet, submarines, surface ships, nuclear, armed vessels, is based just east of there, near Murmansk. To get into the open Atlantic, Russian subs have to pass through this gap. Greenland is right at the top of it. Whoever watches that corridor has an enormous early warning advantage. And Greenland is the watchtower. The US has had a military base in Greenland since World War II. It's called Pittafix Space Base now, formerly Thule Air Base. It sits in the northwest of the island, less than 1,000 miles from the North Pole. It does missile warning. It monitors space. It tracks objects in orbit. And it provides early warning if a ballistic missile is ever fired toward North America. Because the shortest flight path a Russian missile takes to reach the United States goes direct over the Arctic. Greenland is sitting in the middle of that path. This is why the US interest isn't new or random. America tried to buy Greenland in 1867. President Truman secretly offered Denmark $100 million for it in 1946. Military chiefs raised the idea again in 1955. The geography has always made it attractive. Add in the fact that Arctic ice is melting, opening new shipping routes. Add in significant untapped minerals and rare earth elements. Materials needed for technology, clean energy, and military hardware. And suddenly this frozen island with 57,000 people looks less like a quirky real estate pitch and more like a long-running strategic obsession. Does that mean Trump's approach made sense? Well, he caused a diplomatic crisis, threatened tariffs against NATO allies, sent his son on a surprise visit where the main output was a photo, and eventually backed down at Davos in January 2026 with what most analysts described as a deal that looked basically identical to what already existed. So, mixed results. But the geography is real. The interest is old. And that's Greenland. Now, Antarctica. Here's where it gets interesting. Antarctica is a full continent. Not an island, a continent. The 5th largest on Earth. Around 90% of the world's fresh water is locked in its ice. Temperatures inland drop below -60 Celsius in winter. There are no permanent cities. No civilian government, no indigenous population. Nobody is from Antarctica. No one has ever been from Antarctica. Compare that to Greenland, which has people, a government, an elected premier, and a capital city. Antarctica has none of that. So if you're a powerful country and you want a giant frozen landmass, Antarctica seems like the obvious move. No one to negotiate with, no population to upset, no prime minister holding a press conference saying, "This is not for sale." Just ice, penguins, and silence. And here is exactly where Antarctica breaks the whole idea. In 1959, 12 countries signed the Antarctic Treaty. It came into force in 1961. And it did something genuinely unprecedented. It took an entire continent and placed it legally outside the normal rules of ownership, expansion, and militarization, permanently, or at least for as long as the treaty holds. The treaty says Antarctica is for peaceful purposes only. No military bases, no weapons testing, no nuclear activity, and later agreements made commercial mining basically off limits. Scientific research is welcome. Everything else is off the table. But here's the part that makes buying Antarctica structurally impossible. Before the treaty, 7 countries had already staked territorial claims on parts of Antarctica. Britain, Australia, France, Norway, New Zealand, Argentina, Chile. Some of those claims overlap. Most countries in the world don't recognize any of them. The treaty didn't erase those claims. It froze them, right where they were in 1961. No new claims can be made while the treaty is active. No existing claim can be expanded. And nothing that happens there. No research station, no flag planted in the ice, no secret deal signed in a conference room, counts as a basis for new territorial sovereignty. So who exactly do you buy Antarctica from? Nobody owns the whole thing. The 7 countries with claims don't even agree with each other. Most of the world doesn't recognize any of those claims to begin with. There is no seller. There is no deed. There is no authority that can hand you a continent. You'd basically be buying something from nobody, which means you'd be buying nothing. Which means any country that tried to claim it anyway would immediately have 58 treaty nations lined up against them. That is not a real estate deal. That is an international crisis. And for what? Antarctica does not sit between any rival navies. It doesn't face Russia. It doesn't anchor any shipping choke point. The shortest missile path from Russia to the United States does not go through the South Pole. There is no GIU gap equivalent at the bottom of the Earth. And operating anything at scale down there costs several times more than doing the same thing anywhere else on the planet, with almost no infrastructure to work from. Antarctica is genuinely one of the most scientifically important places on Earth. The ice cores there hold climate records going back hundreds of thousands of years. The sky is so dry and clear that it's one of the best places in the world to look into space. Countries from all over the world run research stations there, side by side, peacefully, including rivals who would never cooperate on anything else. That is actually the whole point of the treaty. It was the first arms control agreement of the Cold War, signed by the United States and the Soviet Union at the peak of their rivalry. Both sides looked at Antarctica and said, "Okay, this one place should not become another battlefield." And it has held for over 60 years. Which brings us back to the actual question, why Greenland and not Antarctica? Because Greenland is a real geopolitical target. It has people. It has a government. It has a military base already in operation. It sits on the most watched stretch of the North Atlantic. It is connected to real defense strategy, real shipping routes, real minerals, and real great power competition that has been going on since before any of us were born. And Antarctica is the world pressing pause. It is the one place where countries looked at each other, recognized that ownership would eventually lead to conflict, and agreed to just not do that. No one owns it. No one can buy it. No one can militarize it. And anyone who tried would face the rest of the world. So, Trump wanting Greenland sounds strange until you look at the map. Trump not going after Antarctica sounds obvious. until you realize most people can't actually explain why. Greenland is the place countries can argue over. Antarctica is the place countries agreed decades ago not to argue over. And for now, that agreement is still holding.